Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Joe Morris, and I am the host of the radio podcast Informed Consent. Tune in weekly as I interview everyday people like you and me throughout the communities as they share their experiences and knowledge regarding health matters that will keep you informed and empowered. As always, it takes a village working together to make a difference. This is Informed Consent.
Thank you for listening to the radio podcast Informed Consent with Dr. Joe Morris, reminding you to live well, laugh often, and enjoy life. Informed Consent.
Hello, everybody, and welcome again to Informed Consent. I am your host. I'm Dr. Joe Morris, and today I have someone on the line. Not only is he just a wonderful person, just gifted person. He's a school teacher. He's also a member of a fraternity. I think it's probably the best fraternity in the world, Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. Go Mob.
Go Mob. Yeah.
Go Mob. And he has a very close ties to me. He's not only a relative of mine, but just a good friend indeed. So with no further ado, folks, I'd like to introduce to you Mr. Maurice Dortch. And Mr. Dortch is a young man who has lived with sickle cell all his life. And I invited him to the show so he can talk about sickle cell. Not only talk about it, but give his perspective and his experience with sickle cell and how we can increase awareness. So with no further ado, Mr. Dortch, welcome to the show. How are you, sir?
Thank you. I'm great, Dr. Morris. How are you?
I'm fine. Again, thank you from the depths of my heart for joining the show. And greetings to all of the folks out there in Detroit and Michigan at large, staying warm and battling some of the elements. I also want to give my heart out to those folks who are living currently with out in Michigan with COVID. So I see the numbers are rising there. So our hearts go out to you. But let's get right into it, Mo.
Okay, let's do it.
Let's talk about sickle cell. Let's start off with this. What is sickle cell?
Okay, so sickle cell, which the acronym is SED. SED is a long inherited blood condition that occurs when someone inherits two abnormal sickle cell genes from one from each parent, right? People with sickle cell, our red blood cells lose their normal disc shape. Now, the best way I can picture this is a full moon, right? That's a normal disc shape, okay? And then what happens with sickle cell shaped red blood cell disease is they actually decrease in a kind of crescent moon shape, okay? Which makes it very hard to get through the blood vessel. Okay, they get stuck in there, and once they get stuck in there, they get trapped. And we have the normal disc shape that can't pass through the blood cells, okay? And what that causes is, low blood and oxygen level to the body, often causing severe pain, okay? And a lot of times these sickle cells, with them being in a crescent moon shape, they are harder and they are stickier, unlike the normal cells that are disc shape, that's circular. What happens is they're a little bit more prone to go through the blood vessels a little bit more gummier, so they can pass through easier. But with these crescent shaped sickles, then they are a little harder, okay? Most of the time, these crescent-shaped cells, once they get to a certain part of the body and causes that pain, what happens is it can sometimes spread. I know for me, most of the times it's in my joints, right? So just a quick example. Let's say I start feeling pain and there's low oxygen in my wrist. Okay, from that wrist, then it goes to the elbow, and then from the elbow to the shoulder. That's how sickle cells can clog up the blood vessels and cause for the dish-shaped cells to not be able to flow and circulate easier. So they get trapped in certain places, causing that pain. Okay.
Now, now, Mo, Mo, well, thank you for that, man. You've done just a good synopsis of what it is. A couple of questions I have, and
Sure.
and I think that there's no better expert than to ask one who's living with the disorder.
Yes.
I recently read that people often think it's a Black disease or African American disease, but in essence, what I read is that although African Americans make up the majority of the cases here in America, this is one in, I think I read 1 in 365 African Americans are born with it, but Hispanics also, in those from South Asia, Southern European, and Middle Eastern countries or ancestries. I mean, these people also are impacted by sickle cell. So it's not just a Black thing.
Right.
And I don't think people know that. We often think of it as a Black or African American disorder, but truly, people from Middle Eastern, African, Mediterranean countries are impacted by it.
Yes,
Okay.
you are absolutely right. That is one of the biggest myths out there in the world when it comes to sickle cell, that is only for the African American race. That is not true at all. Actually, here we have a very big Muslim population, and we have
here being
in Detroit, Michigan.
Okay.
We have one of the second largest Muslim population in Dearborn, Michigan, that's right next to Detroit. And they have recently discovered that even our Muslim and Arabic community are diagnosed with sickle cell anemia. So when we have our annual sickle cell walk, we see a lot of brothers and sisters from the Arabic and Muslim community walking with us because they share some of the illnesses as well. And you could, like you said, there's Mexican and Latinos. We have some of everybody that share this common disease. And I think, even though it's not a great disease to have, I think that the awareness is kind of spreading throughout other nationalities and communities. So, yes, that is a great point that you brought up. But that is totally not true. It is not just African Americans who can get this.
And you talked about some of the complications that's associated with sickle cell. Can you touch base on some of the perceptions that others may have of people living with sickle cells?
Okay, well, some of the perceptions is I know that growing up living with sickle cell is that you can't treat a sickle cell kid the same way you would treat a normal kid. Okay. I know a lot of times parents, when they find out that their kids have sickle cell, they tend to treat them a little different. Okay.
In what way?
Just, I want to say in the way of protection. Okay. There's this ideology that when you have a kid with sickle cell, you have to be overprotective of the things that they can and can't do. Now, some things you just have to be aware of, because having sickle cell, basically, it happens at any given time, right? I know I have ruined a couple birthday parties myself, right? Because what happens is I will be somewhere and sickle cell happens, right? And I have no medicine with me. I'm not sure what to take, how to take, when to take it, because it's just having sickle cell is kind of like a living ticking time bomb where it just goes off at any given time. But parents tend to protect and say, oh, you can't do this and you can't do that because you have sickle cell. We don't want to have that type of mentality in the community of people living with sickle cell, because there is a burden on the parent and the child. Okay. So we have to kind of release that that stigma that, okay, well, you can't exercise. As a person living with sickle cell who exercises every day, I actually just came from exercising, right?
Okay.
So
All right.
as a person who lives with sickle cell who exercise every day, I wish that I would have started doing it when I was younger. But like I said, I had an overprotective mom who just
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
scared that if I ran track, if I lift weights, if I swim, different things of that nature, that a sickle cell pain crisis would cause that. When the reality is, we really don't know what causes sickle cell pain crisis, besides the fact that these crescent sickle cell shaped um, blood cells get trapped in your blood vessels and causes pain. That's the only thing we know. We don't know if it's heat. We don't know if it's cold. We don't know.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a
So
mixture.
there's no definitive cause of it, other than
Right.
now. I did read also, and am I just trying to understand more about the disorder, is that there's people who have the trait, and
Yes.
those who have the actual disease itself.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Okay. So here's the thing. There's, like you said, people with the actual disease. We are um we have the full-blown disease, and then we have people who have the trait. Now, the trait, they are carriers, which means when they get older, they definitely have to watch out for who they mate with. Okay. The reason why is because their mate may or may not even know they have sickle cell disease. And that is the importance of testing. And I'll talk to you about that in a second. But what happens is that a lot of people with the sickle cell trait, they carry the disease as far as the trait is concerned. And then they mate with someone who may have a trait. And then that child end up having the disease. And a lot of times, when you have two people with the trait, there is a 50% chance that that baby can have the actual disease, which why you have to really be extremely careful, because people who have the trait really don't show signs of the people with the actual disease. They don't get sick like us. They don't have certain signs and symptoms. They may develop a little jaundice every now and again. Their eyes may get a little yellow. But as far as I know, when it comes to the trait, they are predominantly carriers. Okay.
Okay.
So yeah.
So then, okay, so we have the trait. You mentioned the probability of getting the disorder.
Yes.
But if two people who have sickle cell disease themselves,
Yes.
if they mate, what is the probability of them getting sickle cell? The child.
That it's a very high rate, and it's different for everybody, right? So
Okay.
sometimes you may have a parent with sickle cell disease and another parent with sickle cell disease, and every child that they get may have the disease. But
Okay.
whatever child does not have the actual disease are definitely carriers of the trait.
Okay. Got it. So that's why it's
So
important to be tested. And I know that in America, most all children, I think, are tested now for sickle
yes.
cell disease. Right? It's
Mm-hmm.
common. Now, I want to switch gears a little bit, because there's oftentimes there's a lot of, again, perceptions regarding those living with sickle cell and pain management. Oftentimes, and I know I've heard of this, and amongst healthcare professionals, that there's this perception that those living with sickle cell are drug seekers, are and they become they're addicts.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you shed a little light on that? Because I think that's a very important topic to discuss.
Yeah, and that is a very hot topic. And here's one of the issues with that perception. Sickle cell is genetically different for everybody, just like our fingerprints. Okay, everybody has a unique fingerprint. That's the best way I can describe sickle cell as a chronic illness as far as different patients are concerned, right? So some patients are very severe. And when I say severe, I mean they do get sick a lot. They do need strong medication. They do have to be admitted in the hospital and have multiple surgeries and things of that nature. And when this happens, due to this opioid epidemic, it is a problem with getting strong narcotics now to manage sickle cell pain crisis. I know if I can share my story about that. About 3 years ago, I had a pain crisis episode where I went to the hospital, not the hospital that I'm used to going to, but I went to a different hospital that was closer to where I live. And basically, I was telling them what was going on. I was telling them what my pain was, where it hurted, and what I needed for that pain to stop. Now, the problem was the doctors, I don't think really was listening to me, because sometimes when you know what you need, they look at it as you're drug seeking. But sometimes, I just know what works for me. So when I go in there, and when I go in there and I tell the doctors what I need so I can go home and get back to my regular day, they look at me and say, well, we can't give you that because it's very strong.
Right.
And in this incident, and so in this incident, I told the doctors what I needed. They didn't give it to me, sent me home, and I came back. And then it happened again. So I had went about 3 times to the same hospital. I don't know why I kept going to the same hospital, but I wanted to go there just because, it was closer. So the third time I went, okay, Dr. Morris, the third time I went, I took my mom with me. And when they told her I was in the hospital, screaming and hollering under all this pain, that I was there drug seeking, oh, it was a problem. Okay, that's when I had to actually get enough strength to calm my mom down. I mean, she took my iPhone and put it to my face so it could open up and call my doctor and everything. I mean, she went bonkers. But that actually did happen to me because, I like I said, there's this thing out there where they think that because you know what type of medication you need, and I'll be honest with you, I barely go to the doctor because of this now. I am really afraid to actually go to the hospital because I don't want them thinking I'm there just seeking drugs or I'm there because I'm not in pain. They really do think that. They think that you're not in as much pain as you say you are.
We're gonna you bring up a very important topic, and we definitely will have that topic on this show regarding why persons of color, and particularly African Americans and even males, why they do not trust the healthcare system, or why they do not seek healthcare, and because of these issues you mentioned, even more.
Yes.
So I may have you come back on the show to talk about that experience. Because
Yes.
I definitely interested in hearing your experience. We know that we say pain is whatever the patient say it is, but what
Yes.
you've
Mhm.
demonstrated is that there's still a lot of education that needs to be done, a lot of awareness that should be done amongst healthcare professionals, even those persons in the community who just don't know much about it, and who oftentimes label this, as we said before, a black disease,
Yes.
and
Yes.
and
Most
and
definitely.
we oftentimes associate it with drug seeking. I can only imagine even the children what they have to go through. The amount of days they must miss school or
Yes.
different events because they're labeled as these persons who are attention seeking, and they're labeled. But as you said, this is sickle cell, and these cells are in your blood, and there's lack of
Yes.
oxygen. And we know that when there's lack of oxygen that flows to any organ or tissue, eventually that tissue or organ has the probability of dying.
Yes,
Correct?
it does.
It
Yes.
does.
And if I may, I suffer from a complication called avascular necrosis, AVN.
Okay.
And what happens is, because of lack of oxygen due to sickle cell, your bones start to deteriorate, right? Which means it kind of weakens slowly. And because of this, I've had, two hip surgeries, right? And they recently discovered in my last hospitalization that I have it actually in my shoulder now. And so that is very painful. It's kind of like a very strong arthritis, and when it rains, I really feel it in my joints because of AVN. So uh, it what they're trying to do is get treatment for even those type of things. The healthcare system. I I really look to the healthcare system, and they are doing a good job. We can't punish a whole society and the love they have for the people due to a
Yeah.
few bad apples.
Okay.
But we definitely have in America one of the best healthcare systems. I would say hands down. You know.
Oh wow. Lastly, as we kind of wrap things up, um, how do you? I mean, you mentioned treatment. How do you treat it? How do you
Okay, so
manage?
there are a bunch of different treatments out there. Let me start with like I said before, I am very um strong in advocating for self care. Okay, so with self care, get out and do some type of recreational, even if it's walking every day. Every little bit counts, right? And from there, we actually have um, different type of aromatherapies, right? So you have essential oils you can use. Eucalyptus is my favorite. So sometimes you could just get a little eucalyptus oil and rub it
Yeah.
on the joints and things like that. That's natural uh, self
Yeah.
medication that you can get. Then, like I said, you have the pain medication with Motrin, Tylenol, even stronger things. But now they have found a medication that's very common and treatable called hydroxyurea. Okay, and hydroxyurea is a medication that can decrease many of the complications of sickle cell disease. It's taken by mouth once a day, and it comes in a capsule or liquid form. So what you do is you would take this, and uh, after about 6 months, they get a little blood drawn from you just to see how you're doing. And from hydroxyurea, they actually have geno. They actually have what they're calling the cure, and basically it's a transfusion transplant where they take your cells and basically it goes to I'm trying to think of the body part, but it helps heal the sickle cell process. It don't reverse it; it helps heals it. So you get better and stronger. I'm trying to think.
Is it almost like producing new red blood cells?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm trying to think of the name. It just slipped my mind, Dr. Morris.
It's okay. You can get back with us. Text it to us, and we'll get it to the people.
Yes.
So hydroxyurea. You mentioned transfusion, and hydration. I know is another factor, right? To staying hydrated.
Yes. Staying hydrated is always one of the best ways to treat sickle cell. I know for myself, I run around here drinking water a lot, and that's a heavy debate because we have so many different brands of water, right?
Okay.
It's always a which one is best. Is it alkaline? Is it purified? Is it spring water? So it's a great debate here in Michigan when I get together with the sickle cell crew and we just talk about things like that. So
okay. Well, it's definitely a disorder that I think that needs more awareness and much more education about it, and not only in the Black community but other communities as well, as you mentioned. One last thought before we wrap things up. If you had to give a message to the people regarding sickle cell anemia, what would that final thought be?
My final thoughts to the people, if I had to give one about sickle cell anemia, is that awareness is the key. So many times we support illnesses and disease that are more prone to hit home. Okay, I know, cancer is very bad, and we have all of these different type of cancers and all of these things about cancer that's right in front of our face. But the only time you really hear about sickle cell anemia is if it's in your family or if it's National Sickle Cell Month. We need to talk about this subject way more than just once or twice a year, okay? Because what's going on is that it's deteriorating. People aren't even talking about it with the new treatment and the new cures. And it seems like now the number of people who have sickle cell are basically more in the, I want to say, 25 and up range. So they're not even talking about it at the high school level like they were back when I was in high school. And, we had asthmatics and we had sickle cell patients and we had other things that we could talk about in groups of how to help. Okay. So I would just say that awareness is the key. We have to talk about this subject more and more because it's getting a little broader now. Like we talked about earlier, it's not just in the African American community. It's in the Mexican, Latino. It's in the Arabic. It's in the Muslim. It's in different type of communities now. So we need to be aware of it when it hits home. Okay, well, that's my final thought.
Well, listen, I thank you from the depths of my heart, Maurice. Stay strong. Continue to do the things you're doing in the community, educating the kids, and just being a strong advocate for change. Do I have your consent? Do I have your consent to release this information to the village?
Yes, you do.
Well, there you have it, folks. You've heard it. You have now been informed. Until next time, I'm Dr. Joe Morris, And remember, it takes a village working together to make a difference.
Join us next time as we continue to explore topics that keep you informed and engaged on matters that promote healthy lifestyle.
Informed consent.